I hope you guys have noticed the running theme throughout the afternoon, which is take advantage of every single thing that you possibly can. And I suspect our fabulous alumni are going to reinforce that. So let me start off by actually introducing who you have in front of you right now. I will go closest to me first. Joanna Gadsby graduated from the MLS program in 2007 and has been at UMBC, that's Baltimore County, for non-locals. Albin O'Kuhn, Library and Gallery since 2009. She is the instruction coordinator as well as reference and instruction librarian. Her professional interests include active learning, effective outreach, and critical librarianship. I can say that I have personally worked with Joanna with the Maryland Library Association and seen her at conference presentations. So if you have any interest in academic libraries, talk to her. She's pretty great. Next, we have April Shroeder, who got her MLS in 2010. I actually had classes with April, so this is kind of a fantastic return. Within 6 months of graduation, April was found full-time employment as Teen Services Librarian in Loudoun County in Virginia. That is a particularly prestigious county, so within 6 months of graduation is pretty great. In October 2014, April was promoted to Youth Program Coordinator for Library Administration and no longer works as an Xbox controller passer-outer. April's 8 years of library work have included founding teen programming in rural libraries, coordinating teen volunteer programs for more than 100 youth, and providing story times. She's a graduate of the 2014 class of Virginia Library Leadership Academy and presented a workshop at the 2015 Delaware and Maryland Library Association conference on understanding teen emotional and neurological development. So anything having to do with teens in public libraries, April is a fantastic contact. And next we have Jonathan Barney. So he started off in libraries and high school as a volunteer at his public library. He then attended Utah State University and worked in special collections and archives. So he's libraries through and through. He graduated with a degree in history and a minor in linguistics and classics before attending Princeton, where he worked in geosciences and map library while pursuing a degree in Near East Studies. I'm going to skip through. He returned to school to obtain his MLS at the University of Maryland College Park while working at the Library of Congress as a contract employee for LAC Group. Upon graduation, he was promoted to project manager at LAC and ultimately supervised a staff of over 50. In 2015, he was offered the opportunity to come to work for LAC Group offices as a manager and overseeing nearly a dozen libraries, archives, information service projects in the DC metropolitan area. So, 3 very different tacks once they finish their MLS degree. So you guys are going to have an opportunity to ask questions, but I do have some questions prepared to kind of get the conversation started. If at any point you have one, just raise your hands and we'll work with you. You guys do have to share a mic, so sorry, but it's there and active. So first of all, we talked about your current position, where you graduated and that sort of thing. But can you tell us, while you were an MLS student, if you were involved in any student organizations, what sort of professional development activities, basically what you did while you were here outside of just going to class? And whoever wants to start.
So my answer is really short. The answer is nothing. I was an elementary school teacher, and I did that during the day and did my classes in the evening and online, and just kind of kept my head down and got through it. And I'm here to tell you that was the wrong decision.
I can second that. I was a member of American Library Association starting when I first got the acceptance to grad school. I joined ALA that very day and became a member of YALSA as well, which is the Young Adult Library Services Association. But other than that, I kept my head down and just did my classwork.
Similar boat. I was working full-time while doing my degree, so I was a member of the student chapter for SAA, but I wasn't as active as I could have been, simply because I was either working, sleeping, doing homework, or in class.
So I'm going to skip around these questions, so sorry if you guys thought I was going to do them in order. Let's talk about what did you not do during library school that you wish you had? So you said you're here to tell us what not to do. And whoever can start. What do you wish that you'd done?
I actually wish I had taken opportunities to take more computer science courses, honestly. There was a good opportunity. This was really before, as the MIM program was getting started. I was in the SAA, the archives and track. And honestly, some of the best courses I took were some of the information technology courses. I wish I had taken more. I'm always trying to gain that technological expertise. It's one of the few times you really get a chance to just sit down and just play with it. So I wish I had done a little bit more of that.
I wish I had taken an opportunity to actually get to know my classmates better because I was working and I actually graduated within 16 months because I just wanted to do it and get it over with and get into my career. I wish I had taken time to really get to know everyone else who was in the same boat, whether they were in academic or school or public, it didn't matter. I wish I had just taken more time to get to know my colleagues because this is essentially 2 years of networking. And you might not like that idea in terms of getting out of your comfort zone, but really I wish I had done it because now I go to ALA or YALSA or Virginia Library Association or Maryland Library Association conferences, and I find it just a little more difficult because if I had done it more in college, I would know more people, I would have those ins, and conversations would be easier. Now I essentially, when I see in a iSchool email that there was someone that I went to school with did something really great or relevant to what I'm doing, I will send them an email and say, I don't know if you remember me. And sometimes they say they do, and I think they're lying. I think they Facebooked me and said, oh yeah, now I recognize that face. They don't know my name because I didn't really put myself out there socially. So that's another thing, and not just in class, putting yourself out there, but if there's like an informal meetup or if they bring in a guest presenter, just see if someone wants to go with you and then just chat about it afterwards. I mean, there's enough coffee shops around here that you can have a conversation with someone. Just kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
So I would second those ideas, absolutely. But then also look around. Informal meetups are great, but look around for any associations or formal programs that are going on. Anything that seems like it might be interesting. It took me a really long time to figure out what exactly I was interested in, and because I wasn't working in libraries, library school is a little harder for me because I didn't have that context and I didn't often know the vocabulary and I didn't really know sometimes what was going on, and I felt like I had to catch up a lot. So at the time, and when you're taking classes and you're working, it seems like that's all you have time for, but just taking that time to think about, what else is out there? What organization could I be a part of? Could I go to a meeting? Is there an interesting speaker? Just to try to find something every once in a while to go to, and definitely, yeah.
Well, just to add on to what she was talking about, one of the things I do now and wish I had done more is when these events come up, look into volunteering. There's a lot of things going on, SLA, ALA, and stuff that the library, that the university is doing here. They're always looking for volunteers to just set up tables or coordinate something. And that's a great way to get networking. You're going to meet other people that are interested in that. You're also going to have a chance to maybe get behind the scenes and meet some of the speakers, some of the more important people, and you'll get a chance to really network deeper, and it impresses people. I hire now librarians for a living, and so when I see them being involved and stuff like that, it impresses me, and it shows that there's more, that they're really interested in getting out there.
If you guys came and asked to volunteer at one of our events, I would totally say yes. Please. And I think our two GAs in the back would second me on that front.
That's absolutely a really good point. And I can put in several plugs today for the Maryland Library Association, because the first meeting I ever went to, I was asked to start planning a program, and within a year I was asked to be an officer in that particular division, because people are always looking for someone to help out, and there are fewer people running those organizations, and are always looking for volunteers, and that gives you really good experience. Now you'd say that you planned a program or that you spoke at a local conference, especially with new students. I know that organizations and divisions within organizations are always looking for new ideas, people who are fresh in the field, because you're going to have a different perspective, so that's welcome.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Now I'll circle back and actually ask what was supposed to be question number 2. So when you came into the program, did you have a clear idea of what you wanted to do when you graduated, and how did that change as you went through the program?
I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it has changed. I spent a long time prior to coming to grad school. I was working in a public library, serving teens, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do it forever, maybe be a branch manager someday, but I knew I just wanted to serve teens forever and ever. They were great. I still believe that they're great, but I don't think that I am worthwhile in that position anymore. I feel like I've kind of outgrown it. Other people can be in that position for 20, 30, 40 years and not outgrow it, and that's fine. But I knew that I wanted to do something different and more, and I wanted to serve them in a way that was different than book club, craft programs, interpersonal relationships, because if you work with teens, you are building those relationships. I just knew I was ready for something else. But while I was in school, I took all the youth services track classes. And I feel like I might have pigeonholed myself into one thing without expanding and saying, well, what if that doesn't work out? What else could I fall back on? I didn't really pay attention in the technology classes. I didn't really pay attention in the classes that I didn't think were geared towards the youth services. And I kind of regret that. I wish I had taken other management classes, especially anything that would have had anything to do with budgeting. I cannot impress that enough on you, that you need to know how to budget. You need to know that no matter what position you're in. Knowing the budgeting process is just a huge, huge deal, and that's the kind of thing that will keep you from getting promotions, in my experience. That will keep you from becoming a manager or even a department head. So I would just wish I had expanded my horizons a little bit without just thinking, I'm going to be a teen services librarian for the rest of my life.
Very similar. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do, and none of it actually came to pass. So, but I'm not actually that sad, because I've kind of enjoyed my career, and I've ended up in management, which is not something I ever anticipated. But again, I was a little bit different. I wasn't so geared into one particular thing. I was much more. I wanted to take a little bit of everything, even though I had a very specific idea of what I thought I would be doing. I was just very curious, and so luckily that sort of curiosity has helped me a lot, because in management you end up doing a little bit of everything. I took the management, I took database design, I took all this just because it sounded interesting at the time, and the most bizarre things have come back to be very, very helpful. The management course, which I had to struggle to stay awake in, ended up being very, very useful, and I still pull the notes and books out and go back to it all the time. Same with the database design course, which I use all the time. And it's actually the first promotion I ever got was because of my database design course. So.
My experience was slightly different, but basically gets to the same idea. When I started, I thought I was going to do the school media track just because I had been an elementary school teacher. And once I realized how prescribed it was, I pulled back and said, I'm just going to do a very general degree, and didn't really specialize in anything. And I think that was good, because it gave me a good understanding of a lot of different topics. One thing I wish I'd done a little bit more of in terms of coursework was ask around about courses and professors. In particular, one of the areas I was weaker in was technology, and I took it as a summer course, and it was great, but it was so fast-paced and meant for someone who was already fairly advanced, and I really wish I'd taken that course as a semester-long course. So if you have that opportunity to ask advisors, is it better to do this in the summer or as an accelerated pace, or what do you think of this professor and how their teaching style is? Those conversations are definitely worth having.
So, oh, go.
Sort of along that track, I was wondering how much of what you learned in the classroom have you found is directly useful in the workforce?
So let me just repeat that. So of what you learned in the classroom, how much have you found it useful in the workforce? Which actually is really similar to what I was going to ask, so.
It's true. Quite a bit, and even some of the dry, I used to complain that too much was theory, and I still think there needs to be a lot more practical things in the education. And I highly recommend the report that Lindsay and her team put out on the changing nature of the library science degree and what they're moving towards. One of my big regrets is that because I was already working, I didn't take the opportunity to get a, I can't think of the term.
A specialization?
I used my work experience instead of taking
A field study.
a field study, and that was a big regret. Even though I was working, I thought, oh, this will apply to it. It's practice. It's everything, but I missed out getting something completely in the opposite field, and I wished I had had that experience. But getting back to the direct nature of the question, like some of my technology courses, I've applied very directly. In fact, when I was taking my database design course, I started using that in my work and designing databases and gradually improving from there. So my interpretation technology classes were all very, very applicable. And now that I do a lot of management and technical writing, I often find myself reaching back to the theory because, for example, I have to design an information flow for a very large project. So I'm going back to my old theory classes and going, okay, how do I design information flow to understand, okay, where are the inputs for this system and where are the forms and where, so that information architecture is dry that could have been at the time has actually become incredibly useful for me, and I'm going back to it and looking that up and saying, now I understand the applicability of it, and it's become much more useful.
I was a bit of a know-it-all when I started here, and honestly until recently, because I really thought I had already been working in libraries, I knew what I was doing, I just needed that piece of paper and I was going to get on with my career. Well, that might have worked for the first few years, but recently, now that I'm in an administrative role, it's a lot different, and I wish that I had made college is what you make it. You can just take it at the level that it's given to you, but you need to decide to dig deeper. You need to decide to say, I'm going to take this as what it is, but I'm going to see what else I can do. I'm going to make this harder on myself. I wish I had made it harder on myself, and I didn't. I really just got through it, and it was a very easy process for me because I didn't try to make it something where I could grow. And that's, I fully admit that. For a long time, I really felt that this was just a piece of paper that I got. Only now am I going back to those notes, because I'm a bit of a pack rat when it comes to stuff like that. I'm going back to those notes and saying, what did I actually write down in the notes but not retain? And it has been really useful to go back to some of those. If you have anything.
I would agree with most of that. I think most of what I have to say applies to other questions if you want to continue.
Okay. I will chime in and say that the theory piece that Jonathan talked about, how you, when you're doing it, you're like, why the heck do I need to know Kuhlthau's theory? And when am I ever gonna, let me tell you, day one of my instruction librarianship job, I was like, dang it, they were right. They were right. So keep that in mind.
It took me till at least day 10. I mean,
I had to write an instruction plan, so I was like, oh. Which class did you find most valuable, or did you learn the most in?
So the introduction to your reference class was the one that I always remember as the best class because it was very practical and very enjoyable for me in that respect. But I will agree that those dry theory courses and all of the theory and the other courses definitely come back over and over, and you think about how you can apply them. But when I was actually experiencing school, the practical classes were the best.
The most useful class for me, and I don't remember the actual class, I just remember what I did in the class, and it was grant writing. You're going to do it.
LBSU 723.
Hey, there we go. I loved that because it was very practical. It was something where I could see a result, and I write grants at least monthly. I was doing one today on my, before I even got here. So that was something that was really helpful. So take those practical classes and really keep those notes.
I will echo the writing course, although I didn't take that one simply because as an undergrad I had a lot of writing experience, and I have days where I spend almost 70% of my day writing. I do a lot of technical manuals, I do a lot of proposals and grant writing, so that has become a major part of my daily, the ability to distill these ideas to a very broad audience. I have to write instruction manuals that are for people that are right out of high school and trying to do a very technical duty, all the way up to sort of high-level information workflows for people with advanced degrees. So the writing skill is very important. My most useful courses were, and the ones that I honestly look back on most favorably, were digital asset preservation with Dr. Ambacher, and 2 courses, database design and information retrieval systems, that were part of the MIM program. Honestly, I looked at this a little while ago, and technically I qualify for a MIM degree, even though it was only starting when I was there, but I took all the courses to get a MIM. I didn't intend to, but because those classes were very practical oriented. We built a database, we did all this, and I liked getting the skills. As much as I said the theory is good, and I'm defending that now, even though I hated it then, I still like those really practical experiences, and I would take whatever advantage you can of any course that has a real practical element and just go hog wild. And if it says build a database, build a real robust database that can actually work. Don't just meet the minimal qualifications, assuming you have the time.
Great. Questions from the audience? Yes.
Thank you all so much for coming. Could you talk about when you got out of school and were doing your first interviews, what were the things that employers were most eager to hear from you?
Okay.
As we think about getting ready for that.
So when you graduated, what were the things that employers, and you were interviewing, what were the things that employers were most eager to hear that you had skills in or asking you?
So 2 things about this. One is I had a job already, and I was kind of at an introductory level, and I was able to use my skills as I was going. So by the time I finished my degree, they were impressed enough that they promoted me within the year once the opening became available, because I'd been able to prove that I could do certain things. So I never had to actually, and I've been with the same company ever since, so I never actually had to, oddly enough, I've never had to do that. But from the other perspective, I hire a lot. And can I plug?
Yeah.
So on October 10th, I'm coming back to speak, to talk about my hiring, all of my experience of hiring and what I look for, and because my company, I'm not going to plug my company here at the moment, but what we do is we hire librarians across the board. We have 400 librarians and information professionals, MIM, archivists, record managements, and librarians that work for us at a variety of corporate, academic, and government libraries. And so what I'm going to be talking about on the 10th is just exactly that, what my clients, because I hire on behalf of other clients, what they're looking for. And what I can, sadly to say, the biggest one is almost always experience, which is why I say try to get those freebies that you're going to get here. You're going to get that opportunity to get an internship. There may be a project ongoing that you can find out about. I know some of the people I've gotten from UMD have worked on projects at, say, NAL or some other place that the University of Maryland and the professors here at the iSchool have projects ongoing. Try to get on those if you can, because it gives you great experience that you can offer later on. So volunteer experience is another one. If you have the time, and again, this isn't an option for everybody if you have children, if you have work, but volunteering is a great way to get some of that practical experience. But in terms of what I look for, again, what I'm looking for when I'm hiring somebody is somebody that can understand the problem that my clients are facing and figure out a solution. And what I mean by that is somebody, what connects us all, whether you're MIM or archivist or records management, is we're trying to help people deal with the problem of information. There's too much of it. They don't know how to find the right of it. Yeah, Google can bring you a ton of information, but is it the relevant information? Is it the most correct information? What tools do we have? What tools do you have in your toolkit that you can then come to the client? And this is going to vary depending on the client. What is it that you can present them? Is it a school library where you need to teach information literacy? You might have the ability to teach people how to be better consumers of information, how to navigate that, and how to say, this is a bad source, this is a good source, versus is it a government institution that is trying to manage the flow of incoming information, and they need a way to curate it and get the best of it out of there. So really what you need to do is understand the problem that the person hiring you is trying to solve. They wouldn't be hiring you if they didn't have an information need. They wouldn't have, if they have a problem they need to solve, what can you do to solve it for them? What are your tools that you're going to bring to them? And just sort of that eagerness to say, here's what I will do, just be eager to solve their problem.
So I had a unique experience in that I had no library experience. So I had a degree, and I'd never worked in a library, but I had all this teaching experience. So my biggest challenge going to interviews was convincing people on hiring committees that I had the skills that could translate to their position. And that meant doing a lot of research into their organization and what their need was. But I did 2 field studies while I was here. I took a part-time job on the weekends to get that experience on my resume, because I knew that that was a big hole, a big place that I was lacking. And to say from the other side now, it's, serving on search committees, I know that we look for those ways that people are trying to get that additional experience or show innovation in some way, projects that they've worked on, even if it wasn't directly in their prior job experience. What have you done? What other things have you done to show that you're interested in this type of work?
Coming from the public library background, I think one of the most important things we look for, and I do a lot of hiring, is customer service, because that's the biggest thing that we do. Yeah, we plan programs, yeah, we sling books, but the most important thing is serving customers. And it really does go back to that, smiling, have a nice day, welcome to the library. It's, you don't just get to put your head down and get on a computer. It really is about connecting to the users, whoever that might be, whether it's children, teens, adults, seniors, if you're out in the community doing outreach services, things like that. So knowing your user base as well, I do a lot of hiring of teen services staff, and it's amazing how many people come in and land the interview. So then they come in for the interview, and then they're talking about how they really want to be a children's librarian, but they'll just suffer through being a teen services person, and that's really disheartening, because if you're going to interview for it, actually be interested in the job, do the research. If you're walking into the Gum Spring Library Teen Center, you should know that Gum Spring Library has a teen center. Okay, you should know these things. There's this thing called the internet where you can really research the heck out of the place you're out to interview at. So do that. Interview them, figure out who maybe is on the hiring panel, check out their LinkedIn, see what their projects are, not so you can butter them up, but just so you know, what are they involved in? What do they do? If you were to Google my name, you'd see the things that I've presented on at conferences recently. You would see the committees I'm on. Again, not a way to butter me up, but that's a way for you to see what's important to the Youth Services Programming Coordinator at Loudoun County Public Library. Clearly, what she does in her personal time and in her professional development time, that's important to the system, because my director would not pay for me to go to these conferences if it was not directly affecting Loudoun County Public Library. So.
We got lots from the audience. I think your hand was up first.
Can I ask one of the panel members? Okay, so my question is for Joanna, because I have my sights set on the academic library, and I'm wondering, and this will build on your previous answer, what compelled you to the academic library, and what was that journey like for you post-graduation, those 2 years? Please don't tell me that it took you 2 years of searching and interviewing.
It didn't, and I wish I had a really eloquent answer for you, but I'll just tell you my story. So I was working, teaching. The first year after I graduated, I actually didn't look for jobs because I was already working. I kind of shifted in the job I was in so that I was doing some media services, and the next year I started looking more actively, and I'd been in schools for 10 years, so I was really looking for something different, and that's what drew me to academic libraries, the opportunity to work with students in a different way, the opportunity to still do some teaching, but without being a classroom teacher and having that be my whole life. So I did both my field studies I did in academic libraries, again, to kind of try that out, and sometimes I think maybe I should have done field studies in other kinds of libraries, but I mean, this has worked out for me, so it's not that big of a regret. But, you know, being in those environments, I realized, you know, that really helped cement that was what I wanted to do. And so I interviewed for my current job in 2008. I've only been to 2 interviews. I've only had 1 library job. The first one I obviously didn't get, but the second interview was at UMBC, and I only got the interview because I had done a field study at UMBC, and not to say that, you know, that got me in the door, but what actually happened was they listed the job, I applied for the job, and my field study supervisor, who was then at a different institution, encouraged me to apply for it. I said, oh, I already applied for it, but I haven't heard anything, and she made a phone call, and I got an interview. So, I mean, that connection got my foot in the door. She didn't get me the job, but, you know, she got me an interview. So she, you know, my resume got pulled from that stack when maybe it wouldn't have been otherwise, again, due to my lack of experience. So, you know, that doing the field study got me this job. I mean, I did some work too, but so then the reason it took another year, I interviewed in September 2008, so right before the big stock market crash. And they offered me the job in November 2008, but then called me back immediately and said, we just found out the line has been frozen. So I waited until April for it to be thawed, which worked out because I was teaching. You know, I would have had to quit my job mid-year, which I wasn't really in a position to do. So it all worked out, but you know, my journey has been fairly specific, but, you know, it's been good. You know, this is absolutely, you know, where I want to be. So did that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if I strayed too much.
Okay.
After getting your degree, did you feel like you were perfectly qualified for the position that you applied for? And if not, what were the areas that you felt like you were lacking?
So let me repeat the question. After completing your degree, did you feel like you were perfectly qualified for positions? Never. And what do you think that you were lacking, or what areas would you have developed further?
I still don't feel qualified.
Me neither.
I mean, I always tell people, if you're, apply for the job. It will never ever hurt to apply for the job. Don't lie. We actually had to fire somebody recently because of one of the, you know, we do background checks and we call references, but some skill that they said they had that wasn't really pertinent in their previous jobs, turns out they made up. And when it turns out they couldn't do it, we had to unfortunately let them go. But at the same time, you know, as long as you're open and honest about that sort of thing, never let lack of qualifications keep you from applying and going after a job. As long as you're upfront, you say, hey, I may not fit this perfectly, but here's why I think that doesn't matter, and that will get you in a lot of doors. It impresses people, and it also, you know, prevents you from being fired later on when they find out you lied. Don't claim to know Spanish if you only took one course of Rosetta Stone. It doesn't count. But yeah, I honestly still don't feel qualified. The only thing I could say as far as getting more qualified, and that's kind of tricky because you never know exactly what they're going to be looking for. And so being perfectly prepared is just not something I ever see happening. Like I've said earlier, I wish I had taken some more IT courses, but that's just something I enjoy, so I still do those on my own. And my company, at least now, I've been with them long enough that I get a stipend for continuous education, and so that's nice. So I get to pursue that, but you'll never be perfectly prepared, so I don't even think that's something to work for because it just isn't possible.
When you see the job description opening, just go through and underline every little thing. And if you still want the job after you underline all those and say, yeah, I'm pretty qualified for some of these, not all of them, at the end of the interview when they say, do you have any questions for us? Don't even ask. You probably have questions. You should always ask questions. But tell them, I understand that you're looking for someone with this skill. I might not have this, but here's how I've looked into it already. You're going to have some time between landing the interview and actually going to the interview. So take that time to look into that and say, okay, I don't have this skill, but here's how I figured out how to learn it. Excel, say, hey, I picked up a book at the library and I'm already studying it. Or there's a database that we subscribe to at the library called lynda.com where you can learn a lot of tech things and software like that. So say, I'm actively working on this. Another thing is, look at the job descriptions and the job ads for jobs you're going to want later on. So in 2 years from now, what job will you want? Look at those ads now and see what you can be looking into and working on for the next couple of years. And I say 2 years, but of course some of you are going to do it sooner or later. Look into that. So then when you have that degree, you can say, oh yeah, I worked on this thing. Even though there's no class on it, I still pursued it.
2 things, just to play on that. UMD has lynda.com, and it is awesome, and it's really expensive if you don't have an institutional access, so go ahead and go with that. And I don't remember what the third thing is now. Oh, looking at job ads now, plug for the blog. There's thousands of job ads that you can go through and look at, all in one place. Go ahead.
Definitely, I echo what everyone said. Definitely, you'll never feel fully prepared, but making sure that the jobs you apply for aren't too much of a reach, and you can do that absolutely with going through the ad and sort of checking off, this is what I can do, and plugging those things, and making sure that you're really researching the organization and the job, and making sure that you really want the job, because if it's not something, I know we all want a job, but if it's not something that you're totally committed to, it's a lot of work to apply and interview for it. So that making sure that you would be a match yourself if that's something that you would actually want to do.
Okay. Oh, one in the back.
Sure. Do you want to repeat that, or I?
Go ahead.
For those that couldn't hear, she was asking about how I had indicated that I wish I had taken more IT courses, what I wish I had taken. I wish I had gotten now this is just personal as far as what I've become more interested in and where I'm developing my career. But I wish I had taken some actual coding courses. I'm trying, I did take HTML and some Java, some JavaScript and other things, but I'm now learning Java. I'm now trying to learn R, which is a data analytics language. And so I wish I had taken some more hard programming courses, but that again, that depends on where you want to go in your career. But I will say that it's hard to think of too many library positions where some technological skills are not going to be required. I'm always in my office, we often refer to them as unicorns, people that, I've had to find, I've gotten lists of page-long of job descriptions, must know Drupal 7, must know, certain dialects of Russian, and, just insanely specific things. Sometimes we actually can't fill them and have to go back to the client and say, look, there's nobody on this continent that has these job skills. And that does happen, but what I wish I just wish I'd kind of done what they were talking about, is look forward into some of the job postings and look at a job that you're interested in, and most job positions will list certain technologies. They'll say, okay, here's the databases you should be familiar with, here's the languages you should be familiar with. HTML5. If you want to be a systems librarian, you have to know database management. You have to know, certain web technologies, PHP, and various other things, MySQL. Of course, there's very large number of emerging technologies like NoSQL that are coming out that deal with non-relational databases. But of course, you can't always predict what's going to be coming out around the future. So but I would just look at those job postings and find the technologies, find a job you're interested in, see what kind of technology they're saying to learn, because they'll list that, and then go out and pursue that as much as you can.
So we have two special guests who've come in, so I'm actually going to ask these guys to give any final words of advice or guidance. And then I suspect they'll be around for a few minutes after if you have more specific questions. So I'm sorry to cut it off, but any last minute words of advice, guidance, something you wish you had been told at orientation other than what you've said so far?
Go to class early and stick around afterwards and really get to know the people you're in classes with. You're going to end up working with them somewhere down the road, whether it's informally via just a network, or you're going to see them pop up in some kind of, they've gotten an award and you want to know how they did that, and if they can bring that to your library and explore that, how they did that and celebrate that with them. Make friends. Talk to the professors, get to know them. They're going to be really good resources for you. These are things I wish I had done.
Making friends, making connections, meeting people, talking to people, figuring out what exactly it is you're interested in, and plugging into local stuff as well as national conferences. Take advantage of that student rate while you can. See if you can present at a local conference. I'll make a plug for Maryland Library Association. We're always looking. There are lots of different divisions within Maryland Library Association. I have one sad little brochure. I'm hoping maybe someday I'll have more. But I'm currently the chair of marketing and membership for the Maryland Library Association. You would think I had more than one sad brochure. But you can join MLA, and the same is true for DCLA, probably Virginia Library Association. For one price, you can join the national and the state organization. It's pretty cheap, and then you can take advantage of the student rate for programs. There are, specifically speaking for Maryland Library Association, there are lots of different interest groups you can join, programs you can go to. Come to a conference committee meeting. We're always looking for people to help, honestly. You know, the best thing is just to jump in and say, hey, I'm interested, I'm willing to help. And then if you start working with somebody or a particular, on a particular project and it doesn't seem like your thing, you know, feel free to bow out, because you don't want to put all of that energy into something that it turns out you're not that interested in. But it's a really good way to figure out, you know, what you are interested in.
And I'll just echo that as my last comment, is get all the experience you can, take advantage of volunteer opportunities, conferences, volunteer at the conferences, not just don't attend, but be involved in them and gain that experience in the community. As I said, I've hired a lot of people, and a lot of that comes down to the best hires usually come down to referrals, and those referrals come from people you've worked with and volunteered with, and you know, go to a local library and see what they need help with. I can guarantee you they won't turn you away, unless you're really bad. But even then,
None
they'd
of you
probably,
are.
yeah, they'll find something for you to do, and you'll be able to have that experience on your resume. So get all the experience you can.
That's wonderful. If you guys will help me out by thanking all of our panelists.